right. Welcome everyone to Two Plane Sports. My name is Jose. My co-host here is Jacob, or better known as Brum. We are going to be covering the Colorado Buffalo football program. Deion Sanders has made a lot of waves since his hiring less than a week ago, and it's going to be a fun journey. We figured we'd hop on the train with you guys. We'll be covering major stories from coaching hires, since that's still going on. Recruiting, we heavily focus on recruiting. We cover Oklahoma recruiting as well, but we're going to keep both videos and programs separated. So we will be posting exclusively about both of those schools for the foreseeable future. Since most of you guys are probably new, thank you guys for watching. Please hit subscribe, hit the like button. Let us know what you think about everything that we're going to talk about today. Since it is our first video on the Buffs team, we will be talking about all the hires that Deion recently made for his coaching staff, talk about some of the in-home visits that they've already made, talk some recruiting. They are in play for a major running back target in a recent Notre Dame decommit that we'll talk about. And then a couple of guys that might be visiting campus here in a couple weeks when Deion is going to have a big recruiting day or weekend. Those days haven't been announced quite yet, but we'll keep you up to date. Let's go ahead and get started. It's a little bit different. We're used to talking about Oklahoma football, so different colors for us to talk about. But Deion Sanders, like I said, made huge waves. His hiring was huge. He was between Cincinnati and Colorado. Seemed to that Colorado and the administration made a huge push there at the end, and he's making splash hires throughout this staff. Most recently was Vincent Dancy, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He was most recently the head coach at Mississippi Valley State, an HBCU, ex-competitor of Deion. His position isn't quite known yet. He is going to be on staff. He did play linebacker and safety back in his playing days. His time in coaching has been he's still pretty young coach. He's never really had a position role in regards to coaching. He went from DC straight to head coach. So it'll be interesting to see what position he gets. Now, probably the biggest hire, or one of the biggest hires, is Charles Kelly. DC, he will be the defensive coordinator, was the associate defensive coordinator and safeties coach at Alabama. Sean Lewis, previously the head coach at Kent State, probably produced some of the best offenses in the country over the last couple of years. He's going to be the offensive coordinator for Colorado. Bill O'Boyle, also coming from Kent State, going to be the O-line coach. Tim Brewster, a tight end coach, who is, in my opinion, probably also one of the bigger pickups because of his experience coaching at that position. If you guys don't know, he was the coach for the Chargers back when they were the San Diego Chargers, and they drafted Antonio Gates. He's credited for his fast rise into stardom in the NFL. And then there's a couple of names that are still out there that we'll talk about. But Brum, I want to get your thoughts on just the hires that I just mentioned. What do you think about those guys? Can they make a big splash to compete for the Pac-12 in year one of the Deion Sanders regime?
Yeah, so I mean, it is definitely different that we're covering a team with different colors and a different conference, which is totally fine. Not dealing with interconference teams, so it's kind of fun to expand our horizon. And Colorado is a pretty cool school with some good history in college football. But I think we have to start at the top. Looking at Colorado as a program, arguably this season and in recent memory, they have been a bottom five Power Five school in football. I understand some Colorado fans might not be happy with that, but they have not been good. But if there is a guy that can flip a program quickly, it's Deion Sanders. I mean, Deion Sanders, that name alone makes every kid and every recruit turn and look at Colorado at this point. Colorado, whether they're going to land all the 4s and 5 stars, probably not. But the thing is they're going to start to be able to go get into talking with these kids and recruiting, getting them on campus, actually having these kids consider Colorado as a viable option. Before, if you would have hired some random coach, Colorado would have been, stuck with a lot of 3 stars and, mid-tier guys that are good and they'll be able to be good. I mean, Colorado was once really good, especially when they were in the Big 12, before they left for the Pac-12. I mean, Colorado has been good in the past. Deion brings that star factor, that wow factor. It seems like that the program, there's a lot of boosters, there's a lot of people behind this program. They've invested in new facilities. Like they're ready to get going and turn back the clock. And if there's a guy that can do it, it's Deion. He's different, he's loud, but he brings that wow factor in. A lot of kids want to play for him, i.e. Travis Hunter, which we'll talk about him later. If there's a guy to do it quickly, it's him. Now, I will say from our experience with Oklahoma, a little bit different compared, Colorado was 1-11 and Oklahoma, what were we, 10-2 last year? I think it was 10-2. And it's totally different scenarios. Oklahoma had more talent. Colorado does not. But brand new coaching staffs come in. It is really tough to flip a roster and be extremely competitive in year one. And I will give credit to Lincoln Riley. He took a 4-8 team and they went 11-2 in their season and pending their bowl game. It can be done, but the problem is can Deion get a quarterback like a Caleb Williams? Well, Caleb Williams is not a dime a dozen. So while I think that he will drastically improve this team, I think they're not going to be a 1-win team next year. They're going to go to a bowl game next year. That's how good he's going to be able to turn them into year one. They might win 6 to 8 games, and I think that's solid for year one. And I might be totally wrong, but just from our experience with turnover in the roster, he doesn't know. He needs to evaluate this entire roster. It takes time. Now, looking at the coaching staff, he's bringing in a lot of guys that have that experience and are veteran and know what they're doing. And he's assembling great coaches around him and experienced coaches that know what they're doing. And I think that is going to help him in turning this program around quickly. And you're seeing momentum with kids being truly interested. I mean, he's already had a few commitments. Someone named Dylan Edwards decommitted from Notre Dame. We'll talk about him later. There's a lot of positive momentum. I just think Deion Sanders is the guy that could do it in a quick fashion. I mean, no one else could do it overnight.
No, you're definitely right. He's going to be the name that's going to bring Colorado back into college football relevancy and potentially save the Pac-12 conference, because before this Deion hire, the Pac-12 was looking pretty grim when USC and UCLA do end up leaving for the Big Ten here in a couple of years. But their quarterback situation does seem to be figured out with Shedeur Sanders being their quarterback. And he's actually a pretty good quarterback. I know he was competing in the SWAC, so the talent level may not be the exact same compared to the Pac-12, but he's still putting up big numbers. Last season, he completed 70% of his passes for 3,383 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 6 picks. So he's efficient, knows what to do with the ball. I would assume he's going to be doing very similar things in the Pac-12 now that he's going to be part of the Colorado team. But yeah, this is going to be an exciting time for the university. And I know they've made a lot of changes. I saw a report that they made some administrative changes to how they work with transfers. Before, I think it's like 2 or 3 months ago, it was tough to transfer into Colorado, but they've since made some changes to make it easier for general studies students, which for the most part are going to be a lot of freshmen and sophomores, which looking at the transfer portal, that's what a lot of them are, underclassmen that only have those general education courses under their belt. So expect a ton of transfers. We'll talk, but let's get into recruiting now, I guess, simultaneously as well, because this transfer situation is going to be crazy.
I got just one more thing to add about the coaches. Sean Lewis fits perfectly in the Pac-12 for running his offense. I don't know, people probably didn't watch much Kent State, watch much Maction, but he runs an extremely fast, up-tempo breakneck speed type offense that puts up a lot of yards and has a lot of snaps. That's going to fit perfectly in the Pac-12. When you think of the Pac-12, you think the Ducks, you think USC, you think UCLA, Chip Kelly. I mean, like the originator of this up-tempo, crazy fast offense. So he fits the mold of the Pac-12. I just wanted to add that in there, that I felt like that's a strategic hire that Deion made.
Yes. As well as the hire of Charles Kelly, with him being from Alabama, you're probably going to see at least get some looks from those Alabama transfers. But starting with probably the biggest name that is expected to transfer to Colorado, Travis Hunter, 2022 5-star number one player in his class at Jackson State, has put up some ridiculous stats. Plays both ways for Jackson State. We'll see if he's going to be asked to do the same thing at Colorado. Again, competition may be a little different. Deion might ask him to stay on one side of the field, and the defenses are going to be different, right? The asks of him are going to probably be elevated now that he's going to be on a more national stage, because unfortunately Jackson State just is not on national television as much. Colorado will have all eyes on this program. And right now he's not in the transfer portal, but from what the things that Travis has said on like live streams that he's done, and Deion Sanders earlier today, we're recording this on the 8th, said Travis is coming. It's just a matter of time. When would you expect that to happen, Brumbaugh? And what can Buffs fans expect out of Hunter once he does make that move? I guess if he does make that move, I don't want to put him in the portal before he's actually in there.
I mean, so, Jackson State still has another game to play. And Deion has committed to coaching in that game. I believe that Travis Hunter wants to fulfill his obligation to the university that he committed to, just like Deion Sanders does. And they will. Because if Hunter enters the portal now, I mean, he's not going to play at Jackson State. So I see him playing in the game, performing, and then quickly after that, he announces and enters his name into the transfer portal officially. And granted, I mean, he might not, but he went on a Twitch stream as a reaction to Deion Sanders' press conference, and he basically said, "I'm coming, coach." So he's hinted at it. Deion's hinted at it. Nothing's been official, but it just feels like it's inevitable at this point. And I think Travis Hunter is just showing that he's a good guy, and he's not going to bail on his team and just say, "Hey, I'm gonna, we started this. I'm gonna finish it with you guys, and then I'm out." And I think it's going to happen with some other kids too. And he might pull a few other kids from Jackson State with him that are talented. But when you look at Hunter, the reason why, I mean, he was a number one kid for a reason. I mean, you look at his 247 composite score, he was 0.99999 all the way across. And you can't get much better than that on a historical basis. I mean, the only people that have gotten ones before are like a Trevor Lawrence was a 1, Quinn Ewers was 1. I mean, you're talking a handful of people all the time in 247. So he's basically the best you can be coming out of high school. He plays both ways. I do agree. I don't necessarily see him playing both ways just because the commitment and the talent level is definitely more elevated at where, in the Pac-12. I just think it would be really hard because he'd be on the field all the time, and he's playing at such a high level of competition. I mean, no one does that. But could it be done? I'm not going to say no, but it just seems like you play all 12 games, they're competitive games. You're going to be exhausted by the end of the season if your body doesn't break down and you get hurt.
Well, and to bring up his rating again, it's probably the highest rating you can get if you're not a quarterback. I mean, let's be honest. The people that we named that got ones were quarterbacks, and the only one I can think of right now off the top of my head is Vince Young, also quarterback. So Travis is literally probably the perfect prospect that not that is not a quarterback. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he is handled in the Pac-12 and in the positions that he is asked to be in. Could he do it both ways? I think so. He's doing it in the SWAC. Why not? Well, probably not as consistently. Maybe when they need a playmaker, if they realize they don't have the depth at wide receiver for a game, if they have a couple injuries where they need him to come in and make a couple plays, that could definitely be an option for Sean Lewis. Because, like you said, his offense is very explosive. And talking about his offense and a wide receiver that could be coming in to help out this team is Kent State transfer Dante Cephas, wide receiver, very familiar with Sean Lewis. Put up some insane stats this year. The year before in 2021 had over 1,000 yards receiving, and he just picked up an offer from Colorado today. So definitely going to be a guy for Colorado fans to watch out for. As of right now, Oklahoma's got an offer for him as well. Penn State is the perceived leader pre Colorado's offer. I'm sure that this Colorado offer is shaking some things up for him now that he's got a place where he can go that he has some familiarity with the scheme offensively with at least one coach. It's actually going to be two again with Bill O'Boyle coming in as the O-line coach. So the expectations for this Colorado team may not be winning the Pac-12 year one, but with some of the guys like Adante, like Travis, like Sanders coming in to help with the offensive side, this offense is going to be tough to stop. And Dante, uh, if let's picture a world, right, where let's just say Travis has to do very similar things as he's done at Jackson State. You've got Dante on one side, an experienced third-year player or fourth-year player, has had 1,000 yards receiving, and you got Travis Hunter, a second-year player, true sophomore, and an experienced quarterback that really hasn't shown that he has much, that he makes too many errors in passing the ball in the passing game. This offense could be really competitive in the Pac-12, and who knows, maybe even beat the Trojans in year one.
I mean, he could. I mean, the Trojans are going to be vulnerable. Obviously, we saw their tackling abilities. Looking at the leading receiver for Colorado that they had last season was a freshman. He's Jordan Tyson ended the season ended their season at 470 yards, 4 touchdowns. He really started coming on in the end of October, beginning of November. He had 3 games where two of them were over 100. One was just shy of 100 yards in the game, a couple touchdowns in there. So if you add a Cephas and you have Jordan Tyson there, there's something there. I mean, that brings some definitely a different dynamic. And maybe at that point, if you bring in Cephas, does Travis Hunter just come in as a gadget play and not play, consistently, because you've got talented guys elsewhere to cover him. But I mean, they've got talent on this team. I think it's just been a victim of coaching and turnover and various other things. But if they can land a guy like a Cephas, I think it would be huge for them. And I'm not saying that they're going to, because it does seem like Penn State is kind of running away with it, and it doesn't seem like it's trending towards Oklahoma at all. And so it seems like Penn State, but that is pre-Colorado offer. I mean, you get Deion on the phone or a FaceTime or see him in his house or something. He might be able to put the full court press on Cephas and convince him.
Definitely. Staying on the offensive side, because it really seems like even though Deion is one of the best defensive players of all time, he's getting a lot of guys on the offensive side of the ball to really look at joining him in Colorado. Dylan Edwards recently decommitted from Notre Dame after decommitting from Kansas State. Oh, there's been a lot to unfold in Dylan Edwards' time as a recruit. As we mentioned, we have covered Oklahoma recruiting for the last 2 years. He was once a target of Oklahoma, ended up going to Kansas State, as we mentioned, after decommitting from Kansas State, went to Notre Dame, was visited by Notre Dame just a few days ago, and decided that after getting the Colorado offer, Seems like Colorado is going to be his newest landing spot and probably the place that he's going to play college football, at least in year one. That it's always hard to predict with the transfer portal, but he is a very dynamic running back. Every time we talked about him, when we first started talking about him, he was still a 3-star, very underrated at the time. Since then, his ranking has gone up incrementally. Now a 4-star. This dude was the Kansas Gatorade Player of the Year, I believe, as a sophomore or junior. I can't recall exactly, but he's a very dynamic back. And again, with the weapons that could potentially be attending Colorado in year one of Deion Sanders, Dylan Edwards could have that gadget role even because he can catch out of the backfield. He's even in the high school level, he's lined up as a slot receiver. So you've got a guy that can really play two positions at a very high level. He's done so at the high school ranks. And I would say it's fair to see him do the same at the college level. Whenever we would talk about him, a year ago, our comparison was always a Darren Sproles, a Deuce Vaughn. He's super shifty, super fast. He's a dude that kind of brings a lot to your game, and you wouldn't expect him to because of his size, but the speed that he possesses is top notch.
Yeah, we're very familiar with Dylan Edwards. And looking at Dylan Edwards, I haven't really looked into his stats too much because he drifted off the Oklahoma's radar. Now, obviously, he's on our radar again, just for a different school now that we're covering him. For anyone that doesn't know Dylan Edwards, and I would imagine that a lot of Colorado fans are just learning about Dylan Edwards because of this recent development, is Edwards, like you said, started off as a 3-star, extremely underrated from Derby, Kansas Gatorade Player of the Year. In his career, he's played as a sophomore, junior, and senior in high school. In his career, he has 622 carries, 6,426 yards, 10.3 yards a carry, and he has 95 career touchdowns, rushing touchdowns. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. This year was his best year catching the ball, 227 yards, 3 touchdowns. So he had 35 total touchdowns this year. The previous year, he had over 2,600 yards and 38 rushing touchdowns. Extremely dynamic. Deuce Vaughn, Darren Sproles, versatile, a smaller guy. You can't tackle what you can't see, type of guy. I think what also this sends or tells Colorado fans is that Colorado is playing the NIL game. Dylan Edwards, we've known for a while, has been his decision has been influenced based off of NIL, and that's why Notre Dame kind of came in, beat out Kansas State, and now Colorado's come in. And I'm not saying he's not committed to the school or whatever. Just I do think that it's just telling that I think Colorado is playing the NIL game, and I think that's probably something that Deion negotiated for and requested in order for him to accept the position, because he knows what it takes to land a guy or top talent in this day and age of this crazy transfer portal NIL era. And I think that this is telling you that they are playing this game.
Yeah, NIL is going to be a big part of it, and what it's still to be seen what can be done in such a short time, because right now Colorado does not have a very good recruiting class. They're ranked in in the somewhere in the 70s. I believe it's 73. Sorry, I just had it pulled up. 72 overall in recruiting rank in team rankings. Only have 11 recruits. All of them are currently ranked 3-stars. So bringing in a Dylan Edwards could be huge in bumping up that rank, just in sheer production on the field. And then another guy who would be a huge pickup. He currently does not hold an offer from Colorado, but did hold an offer from Jackson State. Was offered in the summer. Malachi Coleman. He is 6'5", 205 pounds, athlete. Many schools have offered him for various positions. He's been offered as a corner. He's been offered as an edge. He's been offered as a linebacker. Oklahoma offered him at one point as a tight end. So this is a dude that really, if Colorado feels like it could be a fit and they can find a way to get enough NIL, set up enough NIL for him to entertain it, and I guess end up offering him, he's a dude that year one is going to be an impactful player, whatever side of the ball he plays on. If it's on, and it would not surprise me if it's on the offensive side of the ball. You see how the size he has it'll be a fun guy to throw to for Sanders, and probably an even more fun guy for Sean Lewis to game plan with.
Malachi Coleman, and it's funny because OU is definitely in on his recruitment as well, and OU eventually backed off because they had other needs elsewhere to fill the scholarships. But we've been both Malachi Coleman fans from for a long time, and he's just that versatile where he can play multiple positions. I mean, he was offered as a tight end by Oklahoma. Georgia offered him as a wide receiver. I think with Nebraska as well, or Georgia offered him as an outside linebacker. Nebraska offered as a wide receiver, and then I think Michigan or USC offered him as an edge. I mean, there's like 4 different positions he was offered at. I think if they're going to get him, they're going to offer him as a wide receiver. He's, like you said, he's 6'5", he's lean, 200, a little over 200 pounds. I think this one could get interesting. He backed off of Nebraska, his commitment to Nebraska after the, staff changes and recent Mickey Joseph news. I think if Colorado does ultimately extend him an offer, my opinion, they would be the perceived leader at that point. And I think that's where he would end up if an offer came. You're muted again.
The reason we believe it would be on the offensive side of the ball is because tight end coach Tim Brewster recently went to visit him. So wide receiver, tight end, it seems like the offensive side of the ball is where they would see him at in this system, the systems that they're running. So this is a dude that, again, could be impactful day one. It's really just a matter of, can they find a spot for him? Because that has been a recurring issue with Malachi Coleman. Unfortunately, a lot of schools have decided to move on after recruiting him pretty heavily. Nebraska has always seemed to be the place to beat, even when you had programs like Miami and Oklahoma and USC recruiting him very heavily. Nebraska was the place to beat, no matter how bad the performance was on the field. Not that the other schools did amazing, but it seems like staying home was a priority for him. Now that Mickey Joseph, like you mentioned, is gone, he's said that relationships are big for him. He has an existing relationship with Tim Brewster. He has an existing relationship with Deion Sanders. Matt Rule is brand new. He's the new kid on the block. And again, if Colorado wants him, I think you're right. He's Colorado's to lose at that point. We'll see how it transpires. Like I said, there's going to be a big recruiting weekend, according to Deion, the weekend of the 17th. He's supposed to be coaching Jackson State's last game that day, and he said he's going to go coach Jackson State in their final game of the year and then get on the first plane back that he can to come back and recruit hard for the University of Colorado. I'd expect probably Travis Hunter to be on that plane with him. We'll see. But you could probably expect some of these guys, a couple of these guys that we mentioned, and way more to be on campus that day, because it's going to be a huge day leading up just a few days before National Signing Day. And it's not like he's not trying to get other big time players on there. He's reached out to Peter Woods, top 50 player in the 2023 class, defensive 5-star defensive lineman. Peter Woods was entertaining the idea of going to Jackson State. Jackson State was one of his final 4 schools before deciding to go to Clemson. It has been reported Deion has just checked in, kind of done a status check to see how locked in he really is with Clemson. Peter is saying that he's very locked in with Clemson, but you never know in recruiting. Anything can happen. These guys aren't 100% committed until they sign that dotted line on the 21st of December or in February, but he's got a lot to do. I would expect a lot of transfers because he is way behind the 8 ball here in the 23 cycle, but it's not impossible to flip a few guys. We saw it last year with Travis Hunter. I would expect him to do that a couple more times in this 23 class, but he's already done well. I mean, in the few days he's been, he did manage to flip a guy that he had committed to Jackson State, Jordan Hall, 3-star offensive tackle. Dude is enormous, 6'8", 330. Watching his tape on 247, definitely has some improving to do. He's big, kind of slow at the moment, but with his size, he's going to be able to just overpower some guys, and especially in the running game. So we'll see what happens there. And then another guy they just recently picked up, Anthony Robinson, 6'3", 195-pound corner, JUCO transfer. Dude is he's ranked as a 4-star JUCO transfer. Talented guy, was impactful for his community college. He's going to be a guy that's probably going to be threatening for some time at Colorado. And then another guy they picked up since Deion was hired was 5-star wide receiver in the 2025 class. Cannot recall the young man's name, but he's from the IMG Academy, very talented, already ranked a 5-star. It's hard to do this many years out to be ranked a 5-star. If you guys are just starting to follow recruiting, you can go look ahead. There's not very many 5-stars in those classes 2-3 years from now, because these evaluators give themselves some room to go up and down, and that you'll see a lot of 4s, but 5-stars are very rare, especially 2 years out.
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different things that are going to be happening for Deion in Colorado, and it's going to be an exciting sprint to the finish line of early National Signing Day, and something that we're going to be covering in depth and providing great insight, recruiting visit updates, and offers and commitments and analysis. So we got a lot of good stuff coming for you guys. We have a pretty good following in OU football. If you go look at our videos, I mean, we've got over 5,000 subscribers. We're at least reputable with Oklahoma. So give us a chance with Colorado, and I think you'll like it.
We're here to be on the journey with you guys. Like Brum said, we're going to be covering this stuff. We will be as up to date as we can be. We'll post Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Mountain Time. Turn on the notification bell, hit the subscribe button, like the video if you enjoyed the content. Give us feedback. We want to know, where can we improve? What kind of stuff do you guys want to hear about? Because we want to make sure we're providing content that you guys actually find informative and entertainful, and that it's entertainment for you. So make sure you hit the like button. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up today, Brum?
No, a lot of exciting things, and we're going to be watching it like a hawk now.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna need to get some Colorado swag, as well as some Oklahoma swag somewhere in this room. But we will see you guys soon. This was a good first episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll see you on Monday.